Last week I was walking through the building. Actually, I was trying to get some exercise just before the lunch break. But this bulletin board out here stopped me dead in my tracks. And I think the title on it is Think Before You Speak. Is that true? Okay. And Regina puts that up. She does a great job, she and Sharon, on the bulletin boards. But I paused as I looked at that and I thought to myself, my, oh my, what a sermon that would make. And think about that for just a moment. It is important that we see these kinds of things. We need to think about how James just read from James chapter 3 and verse 2. I say James, Carol. In James chapter 3 and verse 2, he says, for in many things, listen to him, many things we offend all. If a man or any man offend not in word, listen to what he says. The same is a perfect or fully mature man, and able also to bridle the whole body. That's a pretty simple verse, isn't it? Speaks volumes, though. Over the years, I've been involved in altercations verbally. I was attacked verbally over a sermon. Twice I've been attacked. But it all led with the tongue, losing control, not able to bridle our bodies. And one of the most powerful forces on earth is the tongue. If you listen to me at all, please listen today, not only this morning but tonight. Please listen to what the Bible says. Please listen. You and I both know untold good and untold harm is done through the tongue. You think about it. No wonder James says we're to be swift to hear and slow to speak. Yeah, it's important. And as I've just stated from James chapter 3 and verse 2, if we'll learn to control this tongue, even though, as James says in James 3, it's just a very small part of the body, very tiny. I don't even know what the tongue weighs, but it's not 10 or 12 pounds. Probably less than an ounce or two. Very small. But think about what it does. As a matter of fact, James said it this way. He said the tongue is like a little bitty rudder on a great big ship. And wherever the captain turns that rudder, that's where the ship goes. It's amazing to me what that little rudder can do. Isn't it to you? Have you ever noticed at a dry dock somewhere, like maybe you've been to the oceans or things like that, and you'd see these ships, and then some would be up on some kind of a thing, they were working on them, and there's a little bitty rudder. Hundreds of thousands of tons that thing can turn. So powerful, James says. Brethren, the tongue is powerful. We need to understand that. We need to understand that everything we say must be well thought out before we speak. Let me urge you to never just pop off with your tongue. Don't ever do that. You'll make a fool of yourself. You may destroy a friendship. You may cause someone to never be interested in the Bible or in even becoming a Christian. We need to ask the questions. Number one, is what I'm going to say, is it true? Secondly, what I say, is it going to be helpful? Thirdly, what I say, is it inspiring or edifying? Number four, is it necessary? There are times when I'd listen to people and I just think to myself, I'd cringe and I'd think, oh my, this is not necessary. I wish they would have thought before they opened their mouth. Is it necessary? And then, of course, number five, is it kind? Listen carefully. Number one, is it true? As I've said, words are very powerful. And once they're spoken, guess what? They're spoken. You can't take it back. I saw an article one time. Actually, it was a tract. I don't know who wrote the tract, but boy, I remember what was in it. But I guess what caught my attention more than anything was, it was talking about gossip and what the tongue and what it has done to many people. But what got my attention was he had drawn a picture, or someone did, of a man standing on a mountain, a high mountain. And on that mountain he had a feather pillow. And he had cut the end of that feather pillow out and let the wind just blow them everywhere. And underneath there it said, once spoken, you can never get it back or take it back. If you were standing on a 30,000 foot peak, wind blowing 75, 80 miles an hour, and you cut that pillow full of feathers, and that wind carries those feathers every direction you can think of, it is impossible to go gather those feathers back up. Can't do it. We need to understand that words are that way. Once spoken, you cannot take them back. Listen to Solomon. I love the book of Proverbs. In Proverbs 12 and verse 13, listen to what he says. The wicked, now listen to who he's talking about. The wicked is snared by the transgression of what? His lips. Boy, when I read this, it makes me stop and think about me. Be careful, Jimmy. Think before you speak. Oftentimes, you need to pray before you speak. I never teach a class, and I'm sure you don't if you're a teacher, and I'm sure Joe's this way as a preacher. I never teach a class, and I don't say it, but I'm just saying what God requires of me. I never preach a sermon without going to God in prayer. Never do that. I pray for wisdom. I pray that what I say will bring honor and glory to God. I pray that there will be hearers out there that will hear. But not only hear, but be doers of the word. You see, the wicked is snared by the transgression of his lips, but the just shall come out of trouble. It gives me a lot of comfort, that latter part anyway. I just want to be just. A lot of things have been said about me that are not true over the years. A lot of things will continue to be said about me. But you know what? Solomon is right. If I'll just remain just or righteous, I'll come out of that trouble. And that's what's important. Look at the 18th verse in Proverbs 12. He says, there is that speaketh as piercing words. And let me tell you something. Words are powerful. They can cut your heart into many, many pieces. They can stir anger. Or they can soothe your heart in many peaceful ways. Or they can be soothing and be very comforting to you. It can bring peace and calmness. But Solomon is right. There is that speaks like the piercing of a sword. Very painful is what he's saying. But the tongue of the wise is health. Think before you speak. Is it true? Choose your words very carefully. One thing my dad would teach us kids, even though he was not an educated man as far as books go, but he was educated in life. He said, always be careful what you say. You need to think about it. You need to ask yourself, do I need to say this? Be careful what you say. Well, Solomon said, he that keeps his mouth keeps his life. I guarantee you there's no way to know how many people have been killed because of the mouth or the tongue. A good friend of mine, his son was murdered in Fort Worth, Texas a few years back. Not by wicked men. No. But the young man demanded the man, of course that's back when they had the phone booths, demanded him to get out. They were just messing with the man. He was minding his own business on the phone, and they scared him. And the young man grabbed the door open and said, "I said, get out of there." Well, the guy just shot him between the eyes, killed him instantly. You see what Solomon is saying? He that keeps his mouth keeps his life. But he that opens wide his lips, his lips shall have destruction. God has given us so much information concerning the tongue. So much information. And I thought as I took this and Regina had put that up on the bulletin board, I thought, oh, I wonder how many people will stop and read that. I'm talking about we here. How many of us have walked by that bulletin board and have looked at it? You know, that's why I'm so grateful now that we read the cards when people give them here. It's very special. Because how many people are going to read that note of thank you or whatever once it's on the bulletin board? Now, you may not like it, I don't know, but God bless you to help you. But to take a minute or two out and read a note of thank you is very special. Very special. It shows that we care and it shows that we love and we have compassion. But we need to be very careful, brethren, in the words that we speak. Every single one of us. I want you to consider this. As Solomon said, if you keep your mouth, you keep your life. And it'll keep you from facing destruction. And so we should ask ourselves, is what I'm about to say true? Is it true? Or is it just something that someone has told me that I'm going to tell someone else and go on and on and on? We need to be careful. Really, 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 really careful. In Proverbs 12 and 19, Solomon said, the lips shall be established forever. Listen to him. But a lying tongue is but for a moment. Think about that one. That is powerful. You may or may not agree with what I'm about to say, but man is very prone to lie and to deceive. As a matter of fact, when I study from the Bible in Psalm 118, I think the verse is around 11, 12, or 13. General statement I understand, just like Proverbs 22:6. But David said in that psalm, do not put your trust in man, but in God. Why? Because man is prone to lie and to deceive. And I am not calling anyone in this building or anywhere else a liar. But man is prone to do this. They do it to save face. They do it to hurt. They do it to deceive others. They do it to make themselves look good. There's various reasons as to why they do that. It doesn't mean it's right at all. But is what I'm about to say true? I think all of us need to ask ourselves that question. Is it done with the right heart? You see, because most of the time it's done just to make self look good or to look right. I know that. No smarter than I am. In Psalm 140 and verse 3, the psalmist says this, they have sharpened their tongues like a serpent. It's pretty interesting language, isn't it? They have sharpened their tongues like a serpent. Adder's poison is under their lips. That gets my attention. And the older I get, the more I realize how important it is for me to be careful what I say and why I'm saying it and when I say it. And in return, let me assure you this. I'm very careful at what people say to me. I'm very careful. I'm not saying I don't trust them. I'm just knowing the Word, what the Bible teaches. And so we need to see all of this. I like what Solomon said in Proverbs 6:17. Got to keep in mind here, you've got to keep in mind here, there's 7 things that God hates. If that doesn't get your attention, nothing will. Aren't children beautiful? I heard a preacher say one time, I wish those crying kids would shut up. But you know what? Isn't it a beautiful thing to hear a child? Wow. We need to think, don't we? Anyway, let me get back. That child just got my heart. Think about this. 7 things God hates, isn't it? Now listen to the words. 7 things God hates, or 6 things. The 7th one is an abomination unto Him. But I want to read what He says. Not all of them. But there's 3 here that are on this one verse. So I'll just read the whole verse. God hates a proud look. That's pretty blunt. Solomon said, God hates a lying tongue. God hates that. And God hates those who shed innocent blood. America is one of the most killing nations on this earth. We give no thought about killing a child, taking it from a mother's womb while it's kicking, and sell its parts. We are a vicious people. We will go to the roof to save a whale or some rat that's running off in a field somewhere, about to go extinct. But we won't speak out for a baby's life. God hates that sin. But He doesn't hate that any more than He hates a lying tongue. Hate is hate. The 7th thing that's an abomination to God are those who sow discord among the brethren. And by the way, guess how that starts? Right there, with the tongue. Please listen carefully. If it isn't the truth, then please remove it from you. Solomon deals with this in Proverbs 4:24. Put away from thee a froward tongue or mouth, he says. In other words, move from you that which is not true. Just move it, take it away. And perverse lips put far from thee. Why? Because he's talking about the fact that it is not true. And we need to ask ourselves, is this true? Let's go to number 2. Is it helpful? Is what I'm about to say going to help you, or is it going to hurt you? You see, I have a motive, either to help or to hurt, one of the two. There are no in-betweens. I have a motive, either to be right or to be wrong. There's no in-between. I can't straddle the fence and say this or that. It is one way or the other. We speak a lot, but when we speak, we should speak to help and not to hurt. I want to give you a verse, and I want you to go and I want you to study it, because I want you to study chapter 4 of Ephesians. I want you to begin with chapter 4, verse 7. I want you sometimes during the day to look verse 7 through 16. Wish we had time to deal with it now. But I believe one of the most unthought about verses is in verse 8. Listen to this. Wherefore he saith, when he ascended, this is Jesus when he rose up, when he ascended upon high, he led captivity captive and gave gifts unto men. In other words, what Paul is saying is, what did Jesus do? He frees those that are captive to sin. The blood of Jesus makes us free. We're no longer captive to sin. We're not in captivity of sin unless we allow it to happen. You know, in our prison systems in America, when a person gets out of prison, about 85 to 90% of them go right back into prison. Why? Because they do not rehabilitate themselves. And other reasons. Many, many times when people do not control their tongue, they get themselves in trouble again and again and again and again. But I will tell you one thing, Ephesians chapter 4, verse 8, but really and truly, I want you to look at verse 7 through 16. You talk about a masterpiece. You talk about a masterpiece. I think about Ephesians 4:15 when Paul said, speak the truth, but how to do it? In love. And unfortunately, many people say, oh, that's just for preachers. They're to speak the truth in love. Every single one of us are to speak the truth in love, no matter what the truth is. Don't tie it to just a preacher. Don't do that. We must be found in righteousness. That is the righteousness of God. This is how God must find us, and He has to see us this way. Again, Paul said in Ephesians chapter 3 and verse 9, listen to him, and to make all men see what is the fellowship of the mystery, which from the beginning of the world hath been hid in God, who created all things by Jesus Christ. You see, that fellowship, that great mystery the world doesn't see. I want to stay in fellowship with God, don't you? And so I must be careful. And I need to think before I speak. When we speak, let us always make sure it's in a helpful way and not a harmful way. We've all been hurt enough, more than likely. But God requires me and you to, before we speak, let's make sure we're doing it to help and not to hurt. You don't need to try to make yourself look good. Jesus already stated, I'll know you, you'll know me by our fruits. It's not a problem. Thirdly, is it inspiring? In other words, is it edifying? Is it what I'm about to say, is it going to build up or is it going to tear down? You know, it's a very special thing to be around those who inspire. As I stated in Bible class this morning about Rita Perkins, I don't know what you are thinking at all, but I know one thing, once we lose her, we have lost a gem. She is one of the most inspiring people I've ever been around. She loves God with all of her heart, soul, mind, and strength. She loves the church here at Nettleton. The very last thing, or next to the last thing she said to me Friday was, and she held her little hand out and said, let's pray together, but tell everybody at Nettleton I love them. I wonder, do we have that kind of love? When she speaks to edify, not to tear down. That's why it's such a joy for me to go visit her. Unfortunately, when I visit some in the hospital, they're just doing nothing but complaining. Well, I didn't think you were going to come by. Nobody ever calls me and visits me. You see, that's not to edify. It's just to make me feel bad. But you see, that doesn't make me feel bad. I want you to know that. Because normally people who do that, guess what? They never check on anybody. They never send a card to anyone. They never call anyone. They just want to make themselves look good. So when I speak, is it going to be for the building up or for the edifying? Look what Paul says about this in his first epistle to the church at Corinth. In 1 Corinthians 14:3, but he that prophesies, looks to him, speak unto men to edification. The prophesying just simply means teachings. When you teach or speak, let it be for edification and exhortation and comfort. Isn't that pretty nice? That's just wonderful stuff. I think about 1 Corinthians 14. Drop down to verse 26 if you would with me. How is it then, brethren, when you come together, every one of you hath a psalm, hath a doctrine, hath a tongue, hath a revelation, hath an interpretation. Let all things be done, how? Unto edifying. Not some of the things, but all things. Let it be done unto edifying. Those are wonderful words. You see, God, our Creator, our Holy Father, it is God who requires us to do our best to edify each other. To do our best. At least try. You know, the sad thing is some people are unlovable. As much as you want to love them, but they just don't want that love. Some people you can't build up. But you can try. You can try. Some people are just bitter no matter what you do or what you say. But that doesn't keep me from doing what God tells me to do through inspiration. I think about Paul's statement to the church at Ephesus. And you'll see this when you study this afternoon in Ephesians 4. Particularly in verse 29. Because you're going to go ahead and read the rest of it. Because that's how it's going to whet your appetite. But I want you to look at verse 29. Let no corrupt communication proceed out of your mouth. Woo. No corrupt communication. Let no corrupt communication proceed out of your mouth, he says. But that which is good to the use of edifying. So when I speak, is it going to be for the tearing down or is it going to be for the building up? I realize that I have to teach what the Bible teaches, and some things are not easy. But whatever I do, I'm to speak it in love. It must be in love. And that's what it's all about. And so he says that you do this to the use of edifying, that it may minister grace unto the hearers. The mouth, the ear. I believe this. I believe if we're honest and we're sincere, I believe these words will sink deep into our hearts. I really believe that. But if not, I'm not wasting my breath because I'm speaking God's word. Some will hear and some will not. Some will do, some will not. Not everyone listened to Jesus. Not everybody obeyed Him. But He loved them enough to talk to them and try to help them. That's all you can do. Number 4, is it necessary? As I've said, I've been around people and I've thought to myself, this is not necessary. Just wasn't necessary to bring that up that way. Or it wasn't necessary to say that at this time. But you see, we like to use stinging words, brethren. Let's don't kid ourselves. Generally speaking, we like to use stinging words. We want to get people's attention. But is it necessary? Everything we say needs to be prayed and thought over. Pray about it. Pray long and hard. And think about it. A lot of things could be avoided by prayer and thought before the mouth is opened. Look at James 1 in verse 19. Wherefore, my beloved brethren, let every man be swift to hear. That's right. James is so right. Slow to speak, slow to anger. Wow. Can you imagine just for a moment if we were to inject these words into our hearts, how great the Church of Christ would be? The world would see us as a loving people, caring people, compassionate people. And yet, we won't even get along. But guess where it starts? Right there. The mouth. We need to take this very seriously. James is absolutely right. We ought to be very, very, very slow to speak and slow to anger, but very quick to listen. But he doesn't stop there. Each and every one of us should be busy practicing pure religion. Pure religion. What is pure religion? It isn't gossip. It isn't speaking out of term. It isn't saying things that hurt. Pure religion, James says, and I like this, pure religion and undefiled before God is this, to visit the fatherless and widows in their affliction and to keep himself unspotted from the world. Now you may be wondering, why in the world does he use that verse? I'll tell you why. Over the years as a Christian, when I find and see Christians that are busy working and helping other people, showing compassion, visiting the widows, the orphans, those that can't help themselves, on and on and on. Guess what? He will not have time to get wrapped up in gossip and other things that hurt. Doesn't have time. I like what I heard the other day in Kroger. I'm not what's the word I'm looking for? I'm not trying to pry into people's businesses or anything like that. But sometimes when you're standing by someone, there's no way in the world you can keep from hearing what they're saying. And this guy came out, he would blah, 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 blah. And the guy was trying to get away from him. We got into the checkout counter, and I like what the guy said. Have no clue who he was, don't even know where he lived or anything, but I really like what he said. He said, I'm going to tell you one more time, if that's all you've got to talk about, don't go there. Stop it right here. And the guy was complaining about somebody. I got that part. But boy, the man shut him up. And I thought to myself, he got quiet. Because the man said, enough is enough. Just shut up now. See, he didn't care who he was around. I'm talking about the big mouth, and that's usually the way it goes. He didn't care if anybody hurt him. He didn't care if he hurt anybody. But the other man evidently cared, and he said, that's enough. You see, if that man was busy helping someone, he wouldn't be doing that. He just couldn't do it. He wouldn't have time. And so we should be busy living a pure religion. We should be doing that. And that also includes the tongue. And that's so important. And so then the last one, I really like it. Is it kind? Kind. I'm getting old and I really enjoy kindness, don't you? That's why I love children. The little girl that came walking by here a while ago, running from Dad. Those children are kind. You didn't see this, but guess what I saw when I saw him go out the door? She looked up at Daddy and smiled, and he picked her up. Now, I'll tell you this much. I bet she doesn't do it again. But children are children. They're pure. They're innocent. She wasn't trying to hurt anybody. She wasn't trying to put on a show. She's a child. She does childish things. And God bless those children. But you know, Paul said, when I was a child, I thought as a child. But when I became a man, I put those things away, those childish things. Do you know some in the church act worse than children? Isn't that sad? And it's all because of this right here, our mouths. And so we need to ask, is it kind? Am I trying to hurt you? Or am I trying to show you kindness? Kindness is one of the products of Christianity. Just one of them, but it's a product of Christianity. And I will say this, by me as a Christian and you, if we're choosing our words, we will do that very carefully, and we'll speak, and what we speak reveals much more about us than we really realize. I've known for years, you can tell a lot about a person by what they say, how they say it, when they say it, and why they say it. I don't always tell a person I don't believe them. I don't always tell a person that I think that they're saying that just to, I don't do that. Maybe I should, but there's a time and there's a place. We just need to understand this kind of stuff. Kindness is, that's what Jesus was kind. Oh, yes, He could discipline, don't get me wrong. But it was out of love. It wasn't out of spite or hatefulness or with a contrite heart. It wasn't for vengeance. No, no, no. People who gossip, I'm talking about use those, what I call unkind or untruthful words. They just simply do that because they want to make themselves look good. That's why they do it. Or there's another reason, they simply want to hurt someone else. Pretty simple, isn't it? Doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out God's Word. And by the way, again, you'll never forget it. When I'm no longer here, down the road somewhere, you will never forget Matthew 7:20. Because I say it over and over and over, and I say it for a reason. Jesus tells me and you through Scripture, you will know a tree by its fruits. No complicated thing about that. Do I know who loves the Lord? Absolutely I do. Do I know who doesn't? Absolutely I do. How do you know? By their fruits. You'll know them, Jesus said. You will recognize them. And 90% of what they say reveals more than they will ever realize. I wonder if we'll get it. Kindness is one of the sweet traits of Christianity. There's a great verse in Matthew 7 and verse 12. If we practice this one verse, if you don't get anything else today, if you'll practice this one verse, and I mean really apply it to your life, it will change you forever. Don't think about what people are doing to you. You think about what Jesus says you're to do to them. Jesus said we're to treat other people the way we want to be treated. Listen to Him. Therefore, listen carefully. All things whatsoever you would that men should do to you, do ye even also to them, for this is the law and the prophets, or the teachings. It is the law of Christ that we treat other people the way we want to be treated. A man asks for your coat, give him your shirt also. If a man slaps you on the cheek, let him take the other cheek. And he's talking about words. Vengeance is not ours. Is it kind? My. Look at Ephesians chapter 4 with me. Listen to what Paul says. Verses 26 through 31 as we begin to end this. Be ye angry and sin not. Let not the sun go down on your wrath, neither give place to the devil. Do we realize who we're really falling under? We're giving place to the devil. Not to God, not to Christ, not to my fellow brother or sister, or brothers and sisters. We're giving place to Satan, the devil, Paul says. But he says, don't do this anymore. Let him that stole steal no more, but rather let him labor, working with his hands the things which is good, that he may have to give to him that needs. Let no corrupt communication proceed out of your mouth, but that which is good to the use of edifying, that it may minister grace unto the hearers. And grieve not the Holy Spirit of God. Whereby you are sealed unto the day of redemption. Let all bitterness and wrath and anger and clamor and evil speaking be put away from you with all malice. We better listen to God's Word. We better listen. We better let it sink into this brain that He's given us. To the heart, as the Bible speaks. The spiritual heart. I'll say this as I close. You have it on your outline. God is very serious about our speech. He's very serious about our speech. He says more about it than we could study in a year's time. He's very serious about it. But not only is He serious about our speech, but He's serious how we speak. Is it true before I speak? Is it helpful? Is it edifying or inspiring? Is it necessary? Is it kind? Every single one of us someday are going to stand before the great I Am. We are going to give an account of our lives. And part of that's going to be the way I spoke. Every word that I spoke is important. Every word that you ever spoke is important. Or every word that I ever will speak is important. And the same for you. It just goes on and on and on. Can we just imagine the change that we would see in the church if we considered these 5 things? Can you even imagine if we considered these 5 things, how the church would change overnight? People would see us happy and loving and caring for each other. We would be very gladly to spend and be spent for the kingdom's sake. We would truly present our bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable unto God, which is our reasonable service. We wouldn't be entangled into this world and all its little gimmicks it has for us. Because we know we brought nothing into this world and we're taking nothing out. God blesses me so that I can bless others. That's the way we would see it. When I speak, I would speak with kindness and care and concern. Some speech has to be strong, but it's to be done out of love. We must have compassion or we are lost. We must not become bitter or we are lost. It doesn't matter if it's me, you, or anyone else. The tongue is something else. I pray to God that He will help us to think about these things. Why we say them, where we say them, and the way we say them, the words. I close with Psalm 34, verses 14 through 16. David said, "Depart from evil and do good. Seek peace and pursue it. The eyes of the Lord are upon the righteous, and His ears are open unto their cry. The face of the Lord is against them that do evil, to cut off the remembrance of them from the earth." Whew. I believe that. Believe me, I believe that. So this morning, I beg you to think before you speak. Think on these things. If you don't have an outline, get it. If not, go back here and where Regina has put it on the bulletin board and write those down and put them on your refrigerator. I have eliminated one for me. For me, not, it's for me. It's lying on my desk and it'll stay there. And I want to look at it every day. Don't come to me with gossip. Don't come to me trying to hurt someone. If you can't have compassion, I'll pray for you. You know, the Bible teaches me to pray for my enemies. Do good unto them who despise me. All of those things. Because see, that's what Christians do. I think we need to examine ourselves very closely and very carefully. All of us, including me. This lesson is for me as much as anyone. But I hope it doesn't fall on deaf ears. I pray to God it doesn't. This morning, if you're not a Christian, you have an opportunity to become one right now by obeying the gospel. We must hear and believe and repent and confess Christ and be baptized for remission of our sins. John 5:24, 8:24, Luke 13:3, Matthew 10:32, Mark 16:16. When you do that, the Lord will add you to His church. What a servant you could be for Him. For those of us that are Christians, where has our tongue taken us? What do we use the tongue for? It can be great and do much good, or it can be horrible and do much damage. But let me assure you of one thing. You can't bring sweet and bitter water out of the same fountain, James says. Think about what he said.